All right, Mo, all yours.
Awesome. Well, excited to get started. I need to be given permission to share. So if you guys can give me a little bit of permission, that'll be great. It says host is disabled, participant screen sharing. There you go. Now I'm good. Awesome. And can you guys give me a thumbs up if you can see the screen? That's amazing.
Yep.
This is a topic that I'm so passionate about because there's so many product leaders that are responsible for building products and especially launching new products. And we have so many underwhelming products in the world. So, it's really important to make sure that when you're launching products, you are doing it with really strong strategy in place so that you can make your competition irrelevant. So a topic I'm really passionate about and happy to make it interactive. So if you have questions, feel free to put up your hands and we can take them or add them to the comments. And I've just loaded up the comments here so I can see you guys. Awesome. So what we're going to be covering today is what makes successful product strategy. We're also going to look at why do so many great products fail and how do you avoid this? We'll look at a framework to help you make your competition irrelevant. And we'll do a final example on the essence of good product strategy. So let's start with this one question. There's like 17 different books written on product strategy. So I'm sure you guys have read some of those books. So if you've read those books or if you haven't read those books, if you've seen content out there, what makes good strategy? If you can put it out into chat or you can put your hands up. What is product strategy about? What does it come down to? Porter's Forces. Yes. Michael Porter's Forces. He's done some iconic work on industry analysis. That's correct. And anybody else? Where to play and how to win, the steps to take to achieve your vision, building a roadmap. Awesome. This is great. 5 C's. So lots of frameworks out there. So, really what product strategy, let's talk about all the things, the direction you want to, the anti-framework. Haha. Yeah, that's good. So we'll look at some of these things that we hear. You might hear that our strategy is to be the best, or our strategy is to work harder. Our employees will work harder, setting big goals, OKRs. That's what strategy is. Or there's recently a really famous book that's been written about network effects. If you have network effects, you will win. That's all you need. You just need to build network effects. It's best talent. It's, switching costs, economies of scales. These are things from Porter's 5 Forces. Product strategy isn't about any of these things. Can you think about examples of companies that have the best network effects, amazing talent, very difficult switching costs, and they still launch products that fail? Can you think about those examples? So think about an example of a product that has a huge brand, amazing network effects, and that company launched a product that was a failure. They discontinued it. Windows Phone, Clubhouse. Oh, it's a testy topic. Yeah, maybe too early, but potentially. Google Plus. Yes, Curtis. Facebook. It's a successful product, but Google Glass, Blockbuster couldn't keep up. Yeah. So I'll look at some digital examples here. So LinkedIn Stories. Think about LinkedIn. They've got all the network effects in the world, don't they? They've got the best talent. They've got Porter's 5 Forces, which is, moats or protection that nobody can come in and defeat. So why are they still launching products that fail? Google Plus, 2 of you guys mentioned that, right? Great resources, big brand, everything going for them, and they still are launching failed products. Well, if it isn't about that, what does it come down to? This is the definition that we have. So strategy is the distinctive position you seek to occupy and your unique leverage that you're going to use to win in the market. And when we go into this, let's talk about some examples here. So I'd like to share this example of Apple. So in September of 1997, Apple was 2 months away from bankruptcy. And there were, Steve Jobs was not the CEO. It was the former CEO of Pepsi that had come, and he was the CEO. And was Apple was about to run out of cash, weren't able to pay their employees. And what did Steve Jobs do? They brought Steve Jobs back. He said, fine, I'll come back on an interim basis. What did he do? He did the exact opposite of what people expected him to do. Apple being a technology company, people thought, well, Steve Jobs is going to double down on technology. He's going to start to invest in R&D. What did he do? He did the exact opposite. He cut 15 desktop lines down to one. He cut all sales channels down to one online. He cut manufacturing by 80%. They got rid of selling all peripherals. What type of strategy is that you're cutting everything? But what this allowed Apple to do was, by going from 15 products down to one, cutting down all their sales channels down to going online, it allowed them to become profitable and wait for the next area of success, which was essentially the iPod. And they used the iPod success to launch the iPhone. And we know the story of Apple. It's the most valuable company in the world, right? So that's a great example of strategy. Another, that's right, Victor, focus, right? Think blue ocean, and that's blue ocean. We're going to be talking about that today. Another example of David versus Goliath, right? What did David decide to do? David was fighting against Goliath, who has way more strength. And what did David do? He said, well, I'm not going to have armor. What? You're fighting against someone with way more strength and you're not going to have armor? Think about features. You're fighting against a giant and you need table stakes features, but you have to have those table stakes. No, you don't, right? So David decided not to use armor, because by not having armor, it allowed David to move faster. He had the skill of throwing slingshots. The leverage was, Goliath's neck wasn't covered, and it was able to take that shot and take out a giant, right? So that's really what good strategy comes down to. It's about understanding the distinctive position you want to occupy and the leverage you want to use to win in the market. And now more than ever, becoming distinctive is so important, because this is the world that we all face. I mean, what we're looking at here is a view from April 2018, many years ago, of all the competitors in the MarTech space. Remember, there's MarTech, there's HR tech, there's sales tech, there's product tech, right? No matter what industry you're in, you've got so much competition. And if you don't have a distinctive position in the market, if you try to be everything for everyone, you are nothing to no one. And over and over again, we keep on seeing product leaders at all sorts of companies try to launch Me Too products or products that don't have a strong differentiation, and they have underwhelming results. And they wonder why that's happening. So number one, it's important to be distinctive. Next, it's about using your unique leverage to win in the market. How do we define leverage? Well, leverage is applying, what is unique to you, your strengths, against the competitor's weakness in a way that your customers care about. So the essence of good strategy comes down to don't compete, but contrast instead. The minute you start to compete with your competition, you already lost. You cannot out Amazon, and you shouldn't try, right? And as product leaders, the strength of our contrast comes from the strength of our trade-offs. That essentially means that if you're saying yes to everyone, and if everyone, you've disappointed none of your customers, you're not really, you're not making any trade-offs. Yes, it's okay to disappoint some customers. It's okay to fire some customers, because the customers that you do say yes to, if they're your ideal customers, you can really differentiate in the market. So at the end of the day, strategy is not about operational efficiency. It's not about saying we can do this better. It's not about a long to-do list. You ask people, what's your strategy? And they go and say, here are the tactics. Here are the things that we're doing. It's also not vague mission statements striving to be the best. It's kind of disappointing. You go to a lot of products and you see their mission and vision. It's all about trying to be the best. It's about finding your unique leverage, having clear trade-offs amongst all parts of the organization. So whether that's marketing, whether it's support, whether it's your product, having those clear trade-offs across all parts of your value chain, and then coherent activities that support that strategy. And so we're going to help you do this today in 3 steps. So the 3 steps to coming to product strategy, coming to a differentiated strategy in the market. The first is understanding your unique leverage. Where do you stand in the market? Based on that, plotting it on a canvas and then leveraging that leverage. And the further down we go in this framework, the more details that we're going to add. At the first step, it's pretty high level. At the second step, we get down to the features. At the third step, we're actually able to project numbers of how successful a launch is going to be based on the one-page template that we're going to be talking about today. And each one of these have further steps. Understanding your leverage, we'll talk through these steps, listing and plotting your leverage, and then leveraging that leverage. So let's go through each one of these. So the first is understanding your leverage. This is the key to it all. You can't direct where you're going if you don't know, you don't have a current state assessment on how you're doing. Understanding your current state begins with understanding what are your strengths and what are your competitors' weakness. Once you have done that, then you can pick an area of niche to launch. It doesn't matter if you are Google and you've got a $50 billion business, you are still going to launch in a niche. And one of the examples that we do in our product strategy class is an example of how Google launched to the enterprise market. I mean, they had all the money in the world. They were one of the most profitable companies in the world, and they still picked a niche to launch, right? And once you have picked that niche, what's your hypothesis? Why do you think these customers are going to select you? And so we'll go over a B2B example and a B2C example to help bring this to light. So let's look at understanding your current state, mapping your strengths against your competitor's weakness. Let's look at a B2B example first. Let's look at Shopify Plus. So when Shopify Plus was being launched, we're all familiar with the consumer Shopify product. Well, actually, Shopify Plus is where 70% of the company's revenue comes from. And this was started in Waterloo around 8 years ago. And when they were launching Shopify Plus, the current state players in the market were Magento and BigCommerce. And Magento and BigCommerce were players that required a heavy amount of customization to get going. I mean, you needed to work with implementation consultants, even to set up a simple store. What Shopify Plus said, what are our strengths? Well, we offer very low customization. There's low cost of ownership. In fact, interestingly, when Shopify Plus went to market, their price was so low that their customers didn't believe their enterprise customers did not believe this was a real product. And one of the strategies they took was actually, adding a fake, buffer on their price and making it more expensive so that, enterprise customers could sell it internally, because the cost of ownership was so low that their customers didn't even believe that this is an enterprise grade model. So, you understand what your competitors' strengths are, and you understand what your weaknesses and strengths are. Based on this, Shopify picked an area of niche. They said, okay, of all the market that exists, which segment can we go for? And the hypothesis was we can go for smaller retailers that are scaling up. I know there's probably people from Walmart, and I was previously at Loblaw Digital. They said, we're not going to go after Walmart. We're not going to go after Loblaw Digital initially. I mean, they require way too much customization. We're going to go after those customers that are actually leaving our platform and initially leaving our platform, those smaller retailers scaling up. So what is the contrapositioning hypothesis? Why would small retailers scaling up want to use our product? Well, smaller retailers that are scaling up would want to use Shopify Plus because they cannot afford the hefty fees. They can't afford the multi-million-dollar implementation fees required to launch a store. And so they're going to be using our product. But remember, at this point, this is still a hypothesis. You could be right or you could be wrong. And as we go down the framework, we're going to get into more details of figuring out, how strong is this hypothesis, and actually being able to predict financial numbers of how successful our launch is going to be. So we've done B2B example. Let's do a consumer example of a brand new product which hasn't even launched yet, but is coming soon. So I'm part of LinkedIn's creator community. So they allow some creators on LinkedIn to have early access to features. So one of the features that I have access to as a creator is LinkedIn Audio. And what is LinkedIn Audio? It is a competitor to Clubhouse. I know that we mentioned Clubhouse earlier on today. So if LinkedIn is launching a competitor to Clubhouse, let's look at the strengths and weaknesses and how LinkedIn can go to market with this. Well, Clubhouse is all about casual drop-in listeners. You've got people that are professionals with huge brands, and you've got the everyday podcaster or everyday person. Now, when you have all sorts of people on a platform, you may get quality or you may not get quality, right? If you are in an A16Z session with Mark Andreessen, sure, that's going to be a great session. But if you're in the average Joe's Clubhouse, you don't know if you're going to get value from that. So you can see there's a complaint coming from Clubhouse listeners of the quality. And so LinkedIn said, listen, we're going to target everyday podcasters. Why did they give me this feature? Well, I run CPO Mastery podcast and I have 30,000 followers on LinkedIn. So I'm going to be very careful of what I share to my network. So already, they're giving this feature to folks that are going to be more careful about their network. And based on this, what is the hypothesis that LinkedIn Audio has? It's working professionals who care about building their brand and their network. And why would these working professionals want to use LinkedIn Audio? What's the hypothesis? Well, you have high quality audio geared towards learning new skills. Thank you, Victor. It was an accomplishment getting to that. So the 30K followers is a vanity metric. Vanity metrics are those metrics that make you feel good and have no impact whatsoever. But sometimes feeling good is just nice. So, all right. So, we have now leveraged our leverage, right? Once we have a hypothesis around the segment that we're going to go after, now it's time to plot the leverage and starting to get into features now. And this is something that we say, when your competitors have 10x your resources, you win by having 10x the focus. And it's all about coming to that focus. Let's talk about plotting your leverage. When it comes to plotting your leverage, there's 3 steps. Number 1 is you list industry factors or major features that your customers care about. Then you distort those factors and then you plot them on a canvas. And this is blue ocean strategy. Let's look at 2 examples, a consumer and B2B example. Let's look at Tesla first. So when people are buying a Tesla, what are the things that customers care about? Well, they care about cost, they care about design, they care about the range, they care about how powerful the car is. Now, Tesla, when they launched, they didn't try to be all things for all people. What do? They distorted factors. They were great at some, but not as good on others. So what you're seeing here in this chart is a score out of 10. If you see a 10 out of 10, it means that Tesla is competing well on that factor, whereas traditional players aren't competing as well on that factor. So what is Tesla really great at? It's technology. It's fairly advanced in its technology. Of course, autopilot is phenomenal, right? There's speed and it's environmentally friendly. But what is Tesla not that great at? It's not a luxurious car. I mean, I have a Model Y for how much it costs. Like, it's very low frills. Like, there's nothing in there. It's kind of, you can get cars for half the price that are way more comfortable and, have way more features than the Tesla does. Tesla is just a screen and that's it. There's nothing else there, right? So not very luxurious. Design arguably works for some people, it doesn't work for others. And range, there's obviously, concerns there. So you can see how Tesla has distorted factors. You're going to be great at some, and you're not going to be great at others. Again, I see over and over again, we do trainings with, I'm not going to mention companies, but large companies, and they're launching Me Too products, and they're saying, well, we're just going to launch some table stakes features or, try to be everything to everyone. You're just not going to be successful. And, whether you're Tesla or whether you're Google, everybody has to pick an area of niche and expand from there. So once you've done that, then you plot it on a canvas. Now let's look at an example of Shopify Plus. Again, Shopify Plus, when they were going to market, they had lots of funds, They weren't short on revenue. They had developers. They could get the best talent, yet they made amazing trade-offs. They went to market against behemoths with way fewer features, and they won. And guess what? Now they're way much bigger than their competition. So again, what were the trade-offs that Shopify made? So here are all the features that when you are launching an enterprise store, people care about being about customization, content management, being multi-store. And what did Shopify do? They said, forget all of this. We're going to launch with very few features. Their cost of ownership is going to be very low. We're going to get people to buy into our vision. People, our enterprise customers, think that they need this customization. We're going to educate them on how they don't need that customization. And they launched in a new market with very few features. They won that market and obviously later added more features, right? Later, they're going after the Magentos of the BigCommerce. And now they're bigger than Magento and bigger than BigCommerce in the enterprise market, right? So you have to start with a niche, irrespective of how big you are, how small you are, but later you can expand to larger markets, right? So then it's about plotting, plotting this on a canvas. When you plot it on the canvas, if you've done this well, what you're going to see is distortion. You're going to see that. So what you see on this canvas are the features or the attributes that your customers care about. Everything from multi-store, content management, customization. The red line is Shopify, and the blue line are traditional players. If you're launching a product and you've done this well, you got to see that distortion. If you see that the red and the blue line are exactly the same, I can guess you're not going to have a really great launch, right? You haven't made trade-offs, right? So that's step 2. That's plotting your leverage. Step 3 is really about leveraging this leverage. And unfortunately, this we don't cover today because it does take a lot of time. And so it is covered in our program. But I want to share one final example of what is the essence of strategy and show contrast in with product faculty. What's our contrast? How do we differentiate in the market? Again, the essence of strategy is about don't compete, contrast instead. The minute you begin to compete, you're in the red ocean and you've already lost. And strong contrast is about strong trade-offs. So let's look at our example here. How do we contrast in the market? Well, what we found is that the way that people go about learning product management is that they start by learning on the job, right? And we call this persona the fumbler. A fumbler is somebody that's using their past experience to help guide them on how product management is done. Now, this doesn't cost anything because you're not taking any training. So it's free from a training perspective, but it does cost your company something. Then what we see is we see people begin to forge their own path. They begin to independently learn. And here there's 2 categories. The basic category is learning by attending events like what you're doing over here, taking a Udemy course or internet. And advanced independent study, that's where Reforge comes in. It's another player out there where you can learn on your own. But what we found is that product is a contact sport. It's kind of like independent study is about going to a library. Can you go to a library and read a book about how to drive? No, you can't do that. If you want to learn how to drive, you got to have a coach. You got to have training. You got to actually be have that live environment. And that's where we come in. We are that live training. And under live training, there's 2 options. Are your goals to get basic skills or are your goals to get advanced skills? Under basic skills, that's where product school independent coaches come in, and advanced skills is where we come in. So you can see here about how we have created a contrast in the market. We are the only ones who offer advanced training, right? So that's just another example of how you create a contrast. And instead of competing, you have to contrast, otherwise you're going to lose. And what that means for us is we accept some people, we don't accept others. The trade-off that we make is we don't work with aspiring PMs. We don't work with folks looking to land a job. We only work with you if you have a PM job already. So that's a little bit about a contrast and example, and happy to take questions here.
Thank you, Mo. Amazing session, always insightful. I do see one question here around how do you ensure you aren't too focused on that niche and eventually don't have enough customers?
Yeah. So when you are thinking about a niche, what you can do is you can do projections on how big that niche actually is. And so you can look at approximate numbers of how many customers exist in that niche and see if that will meet your financial targets. If you know the size of the market is X, you can project that you're going to get 10% of the market. You can see if that meets your needs. But that too, look, at the end of the day, you can always expand later, right? Irrespective of who you are, you can grow into larger markets at a later. So the example of Shopify Plus that we showed, even Google, when they went to the enterprise market, they went for a small niche and they expanded later. And now, they're a much better. Their Google's enterprise business is a fairly large, segment out there.
Awesome. And then we have another question from Peter, who's talking about what about internal views? Like, is there any steps we can follow around building strategy for internal teams?
Yeah. So when it comes to internal products, it comes down to what is the biggest complaint against the existing thing, that the way that they're doing things. So if you're building a reporting product, what is the existing mechanism of people getting reports? If there isn't a strong complaint against the existing method, your new method is not going to get adopted unless you force everyone to use it, right? You have to always think about what's the contrast, what's the biggest complaint. And if you don't solve that in your product, you're not going to get adoption for it. The biggest competitor is Excel and Google. And there's if your biggest competitor is Excel or Google Sheets, that's okay. You can build products that are better than Google Sheets. Arguably, Google Sheets is so powerful that you can almost do anything on it. But that doesn't mean that there aren't products that make the process even simpler. Because using Sheets, or technically you can do Airtable wouldn't exist because you can do everything in Google Sheets, right? So, but Airtable does exist because it makes it easier, because there's a complaint against Google Sheets and Excel.
So I see a hand up by Arshad. So maybe if you want to go off mute and if you have a question, you can ask.
Thank you, Rhythm. Thank you, Mo. Great session. Just had a quick question. It makes sense to categorize, markets. So the example that you had for Tesla was the entire car market. We kind of segregated them into ranks and numbers, which is challenging, right? I mean, because if you look at the entire car market, you have Volvo, which is known for its safety. There are luxury cars, there are powerful cars, there are different types of cars, right? So putting them together into one single thing would be difficult. So how do you do that? How do you deal with that?
So the example that we shared, we only show you relevant industry players, but actuality, it's a great question. You're doing it for your major competitors. So your top 2 or 3 or 4 major competitors, you're individually, doing it for them.
Thank you.
Awesome.
We have another question, Mo, and this is something even I'm excited to hear about.
Yeah.
We'd love to hear about your journey of launching product faculty, from MVP, prototyping, scaling up, strategy, evolution, etc.
So that would be another half an hour session, but I'll just kind of share kind of quickly in a few minutes, basically. So basically, I began by I started teaching product management at BrainStation, which was one of the first places in the world, actually, surprisingly, one of the first places in the world, even before product school came about or General Assembly. They were one of the early folks in product management training. I began to teach over there and had a great time there. But what I found was the course was a little bit more introductory and aimed at helping you land a job, but there wasn't anything for people that are in the job. And that's why I started product faculty, to really kind of have a clear contrast of helping you on the roll, and been doing this for 6 years now.
Awesome. Another question we have is, Mo, will you be able to share the deck?
Absolutely. Yeah. Happy to share the deck with you guys. And answer any further questions that you guys have. If you want to book some time with me, just reach out on LinkedIn, and happy to connect with you guys and go from there. If you wanted to know more, this course sounds interesting to you, you can go to productfaculty.com. If you're a senior product manager, apply there, and our next session is starting in a couple of weeks. Happy to have you join that program as well.
Awesome. I do see a couple of questions from Angad. So Angad, do you want to come up on camera and unmute yourself to ask your question?
Sure. Thanks for the opportunity, Mo, and for the opportunity, Rhythm, and thanks, Mo, for sharing these insights. Almost every product manager asks, right, next steps. So 2 quick questions. If we were to take away and execute these in our firms, how do we go about doing that next? Because almost every product team, or like almost every team, would believe that their product has something distinctive, right? Is it user research which can help us there? That is part 1. And then part 2 is how often do we do these at an yearly level, maybe? So Mo, over to you.
Yeah, this is going to be a little bit of controversy here. So look, when it comes to thinking about your vision, customer interviews are not going to help you. Don't talk to your customers to ask them for your vision. Your vision is inspired by your customers, but that's where you as a product leader has to use both your product sense and intuition and your beliefs of what value you can offer them in the future. And that's how you come with your vision, right? Customer interviews are talking to your customers is great for many things, but it's not to help you derive your vision. Your vision, unfortunately, that has to come from your product sense. And what is product sense? Product sense is at the intersection of creativity and empathy, right? And thinking about how you can add value to your customers. So I hope that was helpful. Yeah, talking to customers is great, but not for when you're defining your vision.
Super. And how often would you review your product strategy, so to say, at a yearly level? How do you do it with firms, right? This is, I think, one of the key steps to growing your product. That was part 2. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, having regular intervals, you review it on a yearly basis, then you review it at a 6-month, and then you review it at quarterly. You're always getting more data to help you inform whether you're on the right track or not. It is a continuous process. One thing I would leave everyone with, and I know if you're launching products, especially if you're at a smaller company, is to ask the question of introspectively look and say, like, is there anything that is actually differentiating here, right? When you're launching new products, you'll be surprised at how many table stake features you can get away with not having if you have something really distinctive in place. What happens is that we spend all of our resources trying to meet table stake features that we never get to the interesting differentiators. Now, arguably, this works better for small companies and mid-market and not for enterprise, but there's so much product to be had at the mid-market and small before you go to enterprise. So win those markets first, get revenue, and then you can expand to those further markets. But like, I don't want to name companies here, but we'll talk to a lot of companies, but strong product leaders are like, hey, what's the differentiator here? How is this going to win in the market? Well, it's our customer base. We've got lots of customers. We've got a big brand, but we just saw how network effects and big brands and those things are not enough if you want to be successful in the market.
Okay, so we have one more question by Stephanie. She's asking, what do you think are the biggest challenges that PMs are facing today?
I'd say it's different for different levels, but I know most about senior product managers. So I'll talk about senior PMs. Those are the mid impact makers. I'm not talking about the CPOs. I'm talking about the mid folks that actually get a lot, execute there. One of the biggest challenges that senior product managers are facing that hinders their career is that they are too focused on the execution piece, and get trapped in what we call the execution trap, right? Keep on, it feels really nice to squash bugs. It feels really nice to, do things, and you're not stepping back as much. And one of the ways that we recommend you to step back is to eliminate your strategy debt. Is actually have a 2-hour slot in your calendar where it's totally booked off, Slack is off, email is off, and you're really thinking through your strategy and even thinking through how to execute better, right? So taking that time out is really going to help, catapult you in your career. So you say, move slowly to move fast.
And going back to picking the niche, Yuting has a question here. What if you pick the wrong niche? Where do you go from there?
That is a real thing that can happen, that you do end up picking the wrong niche. And picking the right niche is really about having strong product sense, right? Your intuition is built up over multiple data points. It's not going to be built over one. So, collecting lots of data over lots of time allows you to have strong product sense. And product sense is at the intersection of empathy with your customer and creativity on how you can solve this really well.
Okay. I'm just trying to see. Yeah, there's one more. We see a lot of layoffs and hiring freezes in tech industry these days. So what product strategy, and this is for the product managers themselves, like what is the strategy that they should utilize for themselves to stay competitive in the marketplace?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I mean, this is a very real thing where there are lots of people being affected by layoffs. And the best thing you can do is to increase your impact. And you can increase your impact by making sure you have the skills, right? So, investing in yourself is the best investment that you can make. So really making sure that you have strong skills that allows you to make an impact can most secure you. So if something happens in your organization, you can go to a different organization to continue to make that impact. Peter, if you can't PM, you can consult. That is true. But don't do consulting for too long, because then you will be out of that loop, out of the PM loop.
Okay. Adam, do you want to go ahead and ask your question?
Mo, thank you for the talk. Excuse me. A topic that's coming up both in our TPMA Slack channel as well as at Q4 and elsewhere about assessing product management level. So the frameworks for that and how to figure it out both for internal team members as well as during the hiring process.
Yeah, that's a great question, and it comes up quite a bit. So this is really dependent on your organization size, right? And your skill levels. But at a high level, we do have a competency that we share of different skills depending on the type of things that are relevant to you, and ways to assess at which, if you're at the APM level or at a more senior level, to help you guide that. So if that's something that's interesting, happy to share that with you guys.
Terrific, thank you.
So Mo, there's another question that like often we see people doing an MBA at to pursue a career in product management, but it's not always required. And I think I can speak to that as well. But under what circumstances would you actually recommend someone pursues an MBA, like for someone who's a current PM or like an aspirational PM?
Yeah, so Rhythm, you've done an MBA yourself, so you can kind of comment on that too. I've also done my MBA at Queen's. Look, it is what we have found is that depending on your goals, if you look at in tech, an MBA is less and less relevant than some of the other fields. But that being said, if you get into a top MBA program at Wharton or Harvard or Stanford, go for it, right? But if at other in other roles, it may not be as relevant, but it is a personal choice.
Yeah, and definitely, like, really like what you mentioned about the goals. Like, the goals should be clear. Like, for me personally, it was like building a good network, because I was not
Absolutely.
only switching industries but also like countries back then. So
Totally.
it was worth having a network here in Toronto and the GTA. Again, another question from Amit again. Same question, but for uh, a computer science degree. Like, is that, how much of that is relevant to pursue a career in product management?
Yeah, no, very relevant, right? Like having a CS degree, at the end of the day, you're building technology products, and so having that degree is very relevant. One of the trends that we've seen is that it's becoming, you know, now you can build almost anything. We saw MarTech or whatever tech area you're in, unless you're building deep AI or tech products, mastery of business concepts, is becoming more important than the technology concepts. That being said, if you have a technology degree, that's an additional advantage to you, but it is becoming less and less important because nowadays we can build almost anything.
And I also have I personally have a question, but I'll ask this one first. How does training slash education for senior PM level roles differ from new PM training?
Yeah. So there's actually 4 components to it. I can go over it, right? So it'll take me about a minute to do so. So senior PM training, there's what we found, and we're going into our 16th cohort now. I trained over 2,500 product managers. It requires crystallization through 4 things: it's curriculum, cases, classroom, and coaching. And all of these have to be catered at that level. So the curriculum, as an example, right? Starting with a focus on product strategy is critical. Our curriculum, when we talk about senior PMs, it starts with strategizing, focusing on the few things that are going to be pivotal in your career, devising a strategic and tactical roadmap that allows you to make an impact, schematize and actualize, taking a feature from the discovery, design, definition, and delivery process, magnetizing and growing your product, technologizing, enhancing your technology stack, and harmonizing. So curriculum has to be specific to that. And then there are cases, right? Putting it into practice. How is this done? How are cases put into practice? And then one-on-one coaching, right? So people learn at their own level, and at a senior PM level, providing adequate right coaches to help support you, all that is very, very critical. So I would say, Peter, it's more of there's a ton of trade-offs that are made, but those trade-offs are made on all aspects of curriculum, classes, cases, and coaching.
Sweet. And the question I have is, for someone looking at their PM career ladder, and right now in the product manager, like on the product manager level, how does the ladder look like, and what are the key contrast areas one would experience as they move up that ladder, from being a product manager to being like an exec in the product management space?
Yeah, I think the early on in your career, you're going to be given the problem to solve. It's a very well-defined area, and you just have to go and execute on that problem. The further you go on your career, the more senior you become, you have to now prioritize what problem should you be solving, right? And that takes a different mindset, right? So early on in your career, if you are very much, if you're always about, hey, like asking for feedback and very execution focused, that's going to hinder you from becoming more successful, because at some point you got to step back, right? You have to think, is this the right thing we should be working on? Asking why. One thing that we see, we have amazing coaches at product faculty, and we look at how they coach. So we have Raphael, who is a director of product at Google, Gift Constable, and the former CPO of Meetup. And it's really interesting observing how these folks coach, because when they're coaching PMs, they spend most of the time listening to the context, asking questions. They give very little advice. You have a 30-minute session, you have a 1-hour session, and they're spending around 90% of the time understanding context. And the advice comes at the end. And that's something that I've seen, right? Like the more senior you become, you give less advice and you listen more. And you understand the context, right? And that actually is way more powerful than just spewing advice, basically.
Nice, nice. And then we have one more question around product faculty that do you see product faculty ever offering a specialized tier of product courses similar to Reforge?
Look, we say Reforge has amazing content, best in the world. Reforge has advanced content, right? Reforge is a great program if you're looking for content. But what we've seen over and over again, content does not lead to transformation. Content is a key component of transformation. But if content alone led to transformation, all you had to do was hand everybody Marty Kagan's book and they would become empowered product leaders. So yes, Reforge has 14 courses, it's a library. It's got tons of information, but information alone doesn't lead to transformation. What leads to transformation is content, it's coaching, it's coming to class, showing up, right? And it's cases. It's all those things together, that allow you to get that learning, right? Similar to, Reforge is a library of content. Can you go to a library and learn how to drive? No, you can't. You got to actually drive, right? You need a coach there. You need to be able to assist you. And that's really what the differentiator comes in. Thank you, Stephanie.
Okay.
And Rhythm.
Yeah, I don't see any other questions, but thank you, Mo. As always, it's a pleasure having you at events and hosting you, listening to all the insights that you have to offer. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. And wonderful to see so many grads. Thank you, Arik, Rhythm, Stephanie. Fantastic to see all you folks here.
Yeah. And thanks everyone for joining in. I don't know if Mo, you're available to hang out for a few more minutes for networking.
Yeah, sure.
We can keep the meeting open for a few more minutes. But I just want to say thank you everyone for joining in today. This officially wraps up our 2021-2022 season of events. And then we'll be resuming events in September. Still a lot of homework to do at our end to plan out the formats, but watch out for announcements very soon.
Awesome. Wonderful session. Thanks so much, Rhythm.
Okay.
I'm going to head out.
Gonna stop recording. Okay.